Hey, welcome to the Kung Fu Vapes Live. I'm your host, John Dawson. And today we're going to spend about 25 minutes real quick and give a quick dive into the origin stories of Kung Fu Vapes. As I load the bird from Indux. This is the Indux bird. This is an induction based heater, and I love it for taking dabs. So without further ado, let's get into that. But yeah, the Kung Fu Vapes origin stories, man. Where do we begin? Let's take it all the way back to 2012. I'm just gonna hop right into it. I was getting some tattoos with my partner Thomas. Rest in peace. We were in San Diego at Black Rose Tattoo in Pacific Beach. Shout out to Eddie Boris. My dog was the tattoo shop plug and liaison at the time, and that's why we were there. So we was getting some work done. We took a break. We were in the back of the tattoo shop, in the parking lot in the back, smoking cigarettes at the time when I smoked. I haven't smoked in years and years, but smoking cigarettes at the time. And one of the tattoo artists during the said cigarette break walked up with a big mod style battery and a little glass dome attachment for his vaporizer and introduced us to smoking hippie crack off of an electronic vaporizer device. That was 2012. And that was really my first experience ever seeing any hardware and touching and using any e-cigarette based hardware. And that's really what it was, right? It was rollover hardware from the e-cigarette space, and you could put solid concentrates on the exposed heating element, and that allowed you to get a big, thick, viscous white cloud of smoke. Didn't taste the best from what I remember. The hash was green and black at the time. It isn't the refined melt in rosin that we have recently, brought so near and dear to our heart, right? It's like a part of my daily life at this point. At the time, the rosin was still traditional hash, and it was black and dark. And smoking it off of this electronic RDA tank was amazing at the time. It was just a glass bubble cap. They became very popular. Our first product was something similar. And so from that parking lot in the back of the tattoo shop, as we traveled back to Vegas, we stopped at every smoke shop, my buddy and I, who's since passed on, who I went to high school with. It was one of my best friends. We went to every smoke shop that we could find, and we bought every Atmos, Cloud Pin, you name it. If we could find it, we bought it, and we filled it with the blackest, greenest, babyish, shittiest BHO extract that we could find. That's what we had at the time. And we smoked out of these pens on the way home, and we broke, I remember, every pen. We had 4 or 5 of them. There was the 710 pen. There were all kinds of jazzy little pens, and basically all had exposed heating elements and a little atomizer that allowed you to load a solid extract into it, put a cap or a mouthpiece on it, and go to town. And my recollection was that the units were made very shittily, very cheaply made products for sure, that really weren't designed for the extracts at all. The thick, viscous, dark, nasty nature of the wax really just rendered those pieces of hardware useless after a couple of tries. And so I remember spending a lot of money on this hardware. Wasn't balling, too heavy at the time, and was literally butthurt that the gear couldn't last. Something I wanted to smoke out of so badly, and I wanted to show off to my friends. The gear was cheaply made and just did not last. And I remember breaking, specifically the cloud pin. The cloud pin pod had 2 little contacts on the bottom. The battery had 2 little contacts. You'd load it and stick the 2 together, and for 1 or 2 hits it might have worked, but after that they were toast. And so that, for me, my love for cannabis and my love for electronics really cemented themselves together in my fucking brain. And I left home eventually from Vegas to Iowa at the time, really having a thirst for wanting to do something in the space. And I ended up going to a convention in 2013, getting some T-shirts made at the swap meet, and going in with a couple of buddies and going to talk to Chinese manufacturers and kind of playing, the role. I was deaf, dumb, and blind and poor at the time, but I was chock full of new ideas from my experiences with these cheaply made vaporizers that I spent money on that I couldn't smoke, that I felt were made like fucking cheap toys. And I wanted to change that. And so approaching these manufacturers with my ideas and concepts with no budget didn't get me very far, got me laughed at, really. But eventually, someone gave me some action um, as far as giving me an ear to listen to my concepts and ideas, and said, "Hey, we'll make that for you, but how much money do you have?" And again, I didn't have much money. A friend, my same buddy Thomas, rest in peace, God bless you, player, believed in what I was trying to do. Really was with me on those core base experiences that sparked all of this, and he ended up giving me my startup money. And then he passed away. And so from that startup money, I initially made a product called the Pocket Rig. And the Kung Fu Vapes Pocket Rig was a glass style atomizer, a 510 atomizer that attached to an adjustable voltage stick battery. And it had two exposed heating elements, and it allowed you to smoke any solid concentrate that you wanted out of it. And it went through a metamorphosis and a progressional phase where I got the base hardware from the manufacturer, I rebranded it, and then I started to work on the internal components and, tried to refine it with little to no knowledge, no experience, and no money. Just some weird internal dialogue that was telling me to go harder, go faster, you can do this better. And maybe that was just my own little ego talking, or maybe that was my creative voice dying to fucking come out and expose itself, right? And so I went with that. I went with that little seed startup money. I think it was $8,000. And from that $8,000, we're approaching quickly upon the $10 million in sale mark. And so I've never stopped. The ideas, the concepts still come from here. And sometimes I get the blessing of having a concept or an idea placed in my hand and gives me the opportunity to refine it, prepare it for market, do some market testing and analysis, some deep R&D, being able to do deconstruction on set devices and have a really intimate understanding and relationship of the components of the PC boards inside, and just having a great relationship with China and the manufacturers allow us to continue to progress hardware in this space and really just design as we go. And so from 2013 to present, we have been really in a progressional stance, if you will, ourselves as a company. We went from a structure from an incorporation where I had a board and I had a bunch of people involved telling me what I should do and how I should do it and all of that to try to get money. And I said, fuck that. And I dissolved the board and I started over. And I got really deep into the disposable game in like 2014, 2015. So 2013, 14, I really just got my feet wet, so to speak. I found a piece of hardware that I could manipulate and bring to market with some really cool branding. I was one of the first in the space that started to deem their hardware medical. I got a medical grade atomizer. I got a medical grade vaporizer, because medical was the game at the time. There wasn't rec. And so if you had a doctor approved device deemed medical grade, you were winning. And so we went through all of the motions to do that. And we made that happen. And we sold a lot of those units, and that was cool. But then, the age of the disposable cartridge came into play. The age of the plastic black cartridge with very long 2-inch braided silica wicking, ropes basically in the tank. And there were so many versions of that. But that really is what ushered in the age of the 510 style cartridge, where, again, miniaturized e-cigarette hardware gets rolled over from that industry to the cannabis industry, because cannabis brands and buyers, producer processors, aren't the most educated people when it comes to vaporizer hardware in 2014. So it was pretty easy, low-hanging fruit for manufacturers and Chinese-based service providers to just feed you a bunch of bullshit and have you figure out how to pair the software with the hardware because they sure the fuck don't know how to do it. And it leads you down a crazy path. And I've been on that path for almost a decade straight now. And I've never stopped loving this or having a deep desire to want to be the best in the space with cutting edge and progressive, ideas of wanting to, redo the internal component structure of said vaporizers and get away from wicking components and alloy components. So from 2013, 2023, I've really been a student of both the e-cigarette manufacturing space and the cannabis vaporizer hardware space. A student of the manufacturing side, the assembly side, the you know everything side from A to Z. How do you initiate an order? How do you OEM rebrand? How do you design hardware from scratch? We've really delved deep into all of these different aspects into the space, and so we became knowledgeable on all of this, and so is my team, specifically my wife and some key core employees that have been with us for years now. We've really just learned a lot of this together. But I think what's at the heart of what we do is the mission to be better, to educate and progress the space by explaining what these components are made out of, how they're made, where they're made, and by who they're made, and what's their relationship with the plant and with the oil that goes into the hardware they design. Vaporizer hardware is, for the most part, designed and manufactured in Shenzhen, China. There's no real cannabis oil on scale or even maybe minute amounts to design with. So you can think about it like this. Vaporizer hardware is an engine that gets designed without the fuel to correctly turn it on where it is manufactured. So they make these engines and they have to send the vaporizers or the engines off to be fueled up correctly by domestic partners, people in the United States who have or make cannabis oil to test and refine and R&D said vaporizer hardware. So there is a lot of space for progression. There is a lot that is left to be desired as far as functionality and compatibility with the hardware and the software, if you will. So my mission, personal mission became, yes, I want to create and put out the best disposable vaporizer hardware in the space, but I also want to have a firm understanding of what I'm selling people and what they're selling to people, right? Because the average everyday consumer isn't really educated about any of this, and they just buy what they can afford or what they've been sold. And so our mission is to, deliver the best hardware possible for our distribution manufacturing brand. But really, I think as we move forward in 2023 and 2024 and so on in the future is, we need to become educators. We need to share all of this experience and really break down and show people what they're smoking and smoking out of. I think it's important. Some people are going to care about the shitty components, the scary, sketchy components, and some people won't. And that's all good. This page and platform will be used to educate and promote what we think is the best hardware in the space. Not only ours, but any other hardware we come to find in our journey. So we appreciate you joining us, and we will see you on the next live. Appreciate you.